Hello, everyone. Yes, we can start this session right now. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Aditya G, Chairman of IEEE Student Branch GCBH. So, today we are here in the third talk session conducted as part of the 15th anniversary celebrations of IEEE SB GCBH. And I'm very much happy to have Mr. Vishnu RG, who is also my senior at college. He's a mechanical engineering pass out from Government Engineering College, Bartnell, in 2005. And I know him very well because he had been part of the accreditation team, which had worked behind the NBA accreditation for our college back in 2017. And he has been of a real support for the team headed by Ramesh sir. I think hope Ramesh sir will join us soon. He has agreed to come in this session. To introduce him, he's after passing out from our college in 2005. He joined Infosys and has been there for 15 years. So it's actually 15th anniversary for him also in the Infosys Private Limited. So also our GE CETA Alumni Association, he's the General Secretary of GE CETA and has contributed a lot for the development of our students in the college. He has been the branch representative for 2001 to 2005 batch for consecutive years and has been the representative of the Career Guidance and Placement Unit at college. So it is with much pride that I welcome him to this session. I welcome all of you to the session. If you have, we'll start the session now. In case if you have any queries, we'll put it to the end of the session. We'll have a Q&A. So until that, please just unmute your mics so that we can conduct the session smoothly. So over to you, Vishnu Chadha.
Thanks, Aditya. So hello, everyone. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. So thanks, Aditya, that was flattening. Yes, you're right. It's been 15 years with Infosys as well. And so both IEEE, GCPH, as well as for me, it's a 15 year together in what we are into. So Aditya did introduce me, so I am not taking much time onto it. In a nutshell, I am part of Infosys family now and working as a group project manager for the digital practice. And I've been part of GCB all along as a student, then as an alumni. So still part of it, proud to be part of it, and glad to be part of this session, particularly when IEEE is celebrating its 15th anniversary. So congratulations to IEEE, GCB branch, as well as to all the members who are part of it. And all this journey would have been amazing because you would have met with a lot of experiences, starting from scratch, building something into an established practice now. So that's absolutely awesome. So congratulations, Aditya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And first of all, let me start with the thanks. Thanks for inviting me to the session. And this session is something which has been termed as industry's new normal, right? And while I was thinking more about it, I was actually looking at the background of the picture that was being posted there. So that itself said jobs. So I would actually take a step back, okay? Step back in the sense that jobs are ultimately a result or an output of something that we are going through. Or it's primarily an end result, or primarily the end beneficiary of something that is coming in. Beneficiary as in like it could be positive, it could be negative. So let us first try to discuss, first try to talk through what's happening all around. And then we will come to the most important, very relevant, but to the last part of it, which is jobs. Okay. So industry, when I say industry, the industry that we mean is very broad in nature, right? And we know the situation that we are going through, the pandemic that has hit us right now. Its magnitude is pretty heavy. All of us are experiencing it in our day-to-day lives. Forget about industry. Every one of us, from a child to an old man or a woman, to somebody who is retired from government job, to somebody who is sitting at home, who is a homemaker, somebody who is a skilled labor, somebody who is part of the unorganized sector, or whether that person is part of the organized sector, it doesn't matter. Each and every element in the society is impacted. And much more the need, majority is impacted in a negative manner, because we are having to redefine some of our normals here. We are having to we are being challenged heavily with whatever we have been doing, whatever we have been used to. And that's what actually sets a new normal, right? Because when something is going on and on for a longer period of time, and we know for sure that it's not going to be absolutely back to the exact same state where we left it, then the need for a new normal comes into practice, becomes a necessity. As engineering students or as practitioners of engineering, we all know this basic principle, right? How engineering sets in itself is based on this principle. Like, something is disrupted, something is changing, and we establish a new model which actually brings in the much needed change. So the change catalyst or the change agent that we refer to that to as. So here in this case, if you look at it, every sector is impacted. And back in history, if we go back, there are very limited number of occasions where so many such a broad nature of impact has happened. Maybe the industrial depression, maybe the world wars. Then subsequently, a minor elements here and there which could have impacted a few sector of companies or few sector of nations, a particular geography, something like that. But of this enormity and huge nature of impact across the globe, across the countries, it has been unparalleled. We all know that. So that's what is differentiating the current problem, and that's what is necessitating the need for a new normal. Now, let's discuss the new normal, right? And before we go to the new normal, what are we seeing today? We are seeing a disruption. And as engineering folks, if we think about it, we call it like digital disruption. Like, for us, anything is digital, right? In any sector, it could be telecom, it could be electronics, it could be electrical engineering, it could be civil, it could be mechanical, it could be IT, so computer science, whatever that be. Absolutely, we are shifting towards a more autonomous, more digitized world. And that shift has been happening. And digital disruptors always have been coming in, right? We, at some point of time, we used to talk about Nokia as the topmost brand. Then all of a sudden, Apple and Android redefined the entire spectrum of digital through mobile channels. We were talking about cable operations, like the whole wired line connections and all. Where are we today? We have absolutely seen a much more modernized world out there right now. We were talking more about mechanical engineering fields of, maybe if we are talking about carbon engines, we were talking about petrol, diesel and all of that, maybe 10 years back. And right now we are talking about more into like SpaceX and all of that, and automated cars, even that at an advanced level, turbocharged engines and all of that. So the digital disruptions have been happening. We have been adopting it. We have been embracing it, and that has been keeping its own pace. Now, what is adding pace to it is because all of a sudden the entire need for that disruption itself has come for a halt. Every company, if we have to split it out, there are two segments, right? One are customers, and second one are service providers, if I put it that way. Customers, including you and me, sometimes service providers, even you and me. It could be anywhere. It is just based on where are we going to position ourselves. In industry terminology, if we could put it that way, user persona, that is what it is. So where are we going to see ourselves as? If I'm seeing myself as a customer, then I'm there. If I'm seeing myself as a service provider, then I'm there. So in any segment, if I look at it, we all are impacted in one way or the other. So we have to put in a perspective for ourselves, how are we going to see this through? So first of all, let's look at the customer angle of it, right? As a customer, we are seeing disruptions all across in telecom right now. We were moving fast into 5G and trials and all of that, but we have seen a huge, because if you look at companies like Dish, T-Mobile, Verizon in US, or even in India, if we look at it, Huawei was coming into picture and all of that, many things were moving in, right? And Spectrum auctions were going on. So we were swiftly advancing in the 5G space. Even in US world, if we look at T-Mobile, Verizon, Dish and all had advanced, they have announced the 5G spectrum and they were actually into it. But that's when the whole, what do I say, the pandemic has hit in, and they have having to think through that. And the thought process is not about abandoning 5G spectrum, or thought process is not about abandoning what they have been through, right? Thought process is more about adopting something which or augmenting something to their current model. That is what we are going to discuss. What's that augmentation is all about? What's that adoption is all about? In mechanical sector, if we look at it, we have been seeing lot many advancements that way, even in aeronautical, even in consumer automobile space and everywhere, right? So all those changes, we are seeing a lot many new adoptions coming in. If I take back into the IT as a core sector itself, IT or computer science as a core sector, we have been discussing more about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of that. And customers have been thinking through that. But now we have this has set in a new base where we have to think through something differently. So ultimately, what has come into existence is more than a normal, an operating model for that normal. As in, like, how do we establish an operating model for that normal? The main thing that is baffling for everyone is that we still don't know what the new normal is going to be. We know that an existing normal has been disrupted. We know that we are trying to adopt a new normal, but we are absolutely not sure whether that new normal has completely settled in or not, or are we going to see constant changes? Because obviously improvisations, continuous improvements will keep happening on top of it. But one thing for sure is that we have started embracing that path. We are onto that path, and that's what is more critical right now. From that perspective, if we look at it, right now the situation is across industry segments, across the world, everybody is impacted, and we were talking about the consumer space. We were talking about customers being impacted. Now let's come back to the service provider part of it. Service providers have been like core engineering services like electronics, or it could be civil engineering providers, or it could be electrical, and it could be IT or computer science providers. You would have noticed that in all my words, I have brought in IT and CS as the last part of it, mainly because there's always a tendency to shift towards that, but it's essentially not the point. It's that everywhere it is impacted, and IT and service providers IT providers are coming upfront as kind of like the first face mask or first representative points to this world. But essentially, everybody is impacted. Now, service providers, what do they have to do? So customers have started thinking differently, right? Everybody needs to adopt something differently. They have to think through that. Their return on investments are heavily impacted. If I look at it, retail had a huge impact initially because of the panic buying that many of us have been doing, or many of the consumers have been doing. There were surge in profits, but ultimately the distribution channels, it's all linked, right? The logistics and distribution channels were heavily impacted, and they have started getting impacted now. But at the same time, the online sales for some of our players have really gone up. If you look at the Amazon's profit book, that states for itself. But at the same time, what about telecom? Telecom has not been much impacted in this space as such, because telecom has been a necessity at this moment. But what has been impacted them is their return on investment, primarily because many of their cash flows have impacted. Like in some of the heavily hit countries or in areas, customers have reached out to governments, or governments have classified telecom and cable providers and all of them as essential services, which means that customers can opt for delayed payments and deferred payments out of it, which just means that I am not going to be paid for the service that I provided in this quarter. Maybe I'll be paid later, or there could be potential bankruptcy declared. So all of this thing can happen. Then let's talk about the sector that was most impacted, airlines, or maybe the services sector, right? Airlines have doomed like anything. Job cuts and flight cancellations have triggered a huge problematic area across the world for all the airlines. If you look at scenarios for American Airlines in US, United Airlines, Delta, all of them who have been surging ahead have put it was just like a breaker put on top of it. Now, Delta by itself cut down about 1,500 subcontractors and then subsequently the employees. United Airlines further had to cut approximately 1,000 employees. American has announced that is already what is done. Now they have been on their bailout money until October, and they have to further roll out most of it. So American has declared some 40,000 possible cuts by October, November kind of thing. So airlines has been the most impacted. And they have to, if they have to come out of it, they have to embrace new models. That's very essential, like social distancing norms and how to book certain pre-booked seats and all of that. How do they ensure that, but they cannot reduce the flight operating capacity, right? The flight capacity still has to be met. And also they cannot operate the flight below a certain capacity, because if they do that, then it's essentially equal to not operating. So they have to maintain a balanced and equilibrium-based model where they can find out the profitable avenues, but at the same time ensure that operations go on without any impact. So essentially, what does it point to? All the companies, all the players will have to find new ways of working. So that's the primary driver towards the new normal. We have to adopt, we have to embrace new ways of working. And what those new ways of working are, they differ from industry to industry. They differ from technology domain to domain. So if I take, again, airlines as a classic example, as I was saying, they have to, from a consumer space, they have to ensure that the social distancing norms, they have to ensure the safety of the passengers, they have to ensure that the seating capacity is met, they have to ensure that the flight safety regulations are properly met, the baggage weight and capacity, which ultimately leads to the overall weight and balancing system in itself, have to be met. So how do they balance all of this? So that's a classic way in which they have to redefine some of their business models and the way in which they're working. IT. Now let's come to IT in itself. IT and computer science needs to adopt a new way of working in which they can service the customers better. What has been the case? Like a lot of customers used to believe that we cannot execute projects, we cannot execute services in a remote manner. Everybody has to be local. Everybody has to be near to me, sitting near to me and working along with me so that it can be effective. Now that notion itself has changed, particularly banking clients. If we look at it as an example, banking clients, similarly insurance sector, telecom sector, some of the areas where customer sensitive information needs to be handled, all of them have been very wary of the fact that they cannot adopt into a remote working model, because they felt that there are security risks that are associated, there are challenges that are going to come through, and I just don't want to take the risk of challenge associated with it. But now when they are forced to do it, because there is no alternative, either their employees or their suppliers, whoever is working on it, it's on the IT side or it is on the other domain side where they are on the credit card services, whatever that be, right? All of them, they are forced to be on a work from home model or forced to be on a remote working model, and there is no choice left in front of us. So the only choice is how do we embrace it? How do we ensure that we put in certain safeguards there and keep it moving? At the same time, what it has thrown up is thrown up a lot of opportunities. It has made it very clear and known that it necessarily need not be somebody sitting next to me where I can execute, I can work something. I can always go based on my my remote operated teams as well. I necessarily need not have to come to this very close and work environment and all of that. That opportunity is kind of like a big opportunity, which is a hidden opportunity inside of it, which we don't immediately realize, but I'll touch upon this part when I come to the last segment on it, which obviously you know what it is. Second part is expertise. What does it mean is that earlier we always had the leeway of living with and being average, being mediocre. Now we are shifting into a world where expertise is going to be pretty important, because the level of expertise, the level of skill somebody can acquire, somebody can put to use is very essential in this world. And the possibility of error, what we call as the error weightage, right, or the clearance that we have is going to come down very low. So which means that we have to hone our skills. The need for skilled labor is going to ultimately increase. Third and the most important point is the digital adoption. As we are talking about digital disruption. Now, digital adoption becomes very vital in this world. When the first issue started happening somewhere, if we go in the March timeframe, right, March, April timeframe, that itself, many of the customers were put to test. Like everybody was talking about being digital. Like even if I put an invoice system as an automated way, I used to call it digital. Or if I'm having a handheld mobile to give some of my services, I used to call it digital. Some of them were partial digital, like partially done by manual process, partially done using systemic processes. Everybody called it digital and said that, okay, oh, we are digital, we are automated and everything. But what it has done is that the initial time frame of March, April and all has put that to real test. People who are truly digital versus people who have spoken to be digital but not yet fully there. So it was actually a reality check for everyone. So most of the clients to understand whether we are really digital or not, whether whatever we have put into use, are they coming into the proper use right now or not. That real test of digital adoption happened in this world, and that is actually going to set the base for the new normal itself that we are talking about. Fourth most important point is about the tools, technology, and the domain expertise. There are a lot of the manual processes will go away. A lot of tools will find its existence coming to picture. A lot of new tools space will be created. Why I'm specifying the tool space is because that gives in a lot of play for the product space to come in. Like many of the customers, many of the industry providers may not have the avenue, may not have the time or even the patience to sit and create new business models or create new solutions which can be rolled out in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years and all. They will probably start looking at more ready-to-market solutions, which brings down the time to market and which are readily deployable, which gives them the time advantage over their competitors, which gives them the time advantage in reaching the customers. So that time to market element, what we call as the right, as what is the quickest way in which I can roll something to my users, which we also call as the minimal viable product, like the base thing, how quickly can I give it to them? And then how can I further enhance on top of it? So that will set the base for a lot of product play, lot of startup play to be in this thing. So the new normal will have a lot of essential facts coming out of it that way. Next important element is the industry is shifting to agile and nimble ways of working. When we say agile, again, till March and all, we were talking about being agile. We were all just about, we knew agile concepts that Scrum, whatever it is, we used to execute that in 2 weeks. Agile means that we will not use waterfall kind of development. We'll quickly pick up the requirements, churn something out, create small models, like the factory model, what we call out in mechanical world, right? So small pieces integrate together. How quickly can I create something out? We are all talking agile. Now, what has become the necessity is that the agile has become a true necessity now, and it has to be digital agile. That's what is differentiating extreme programming, lean programming, or lean base of agile. As in, like, I have to be truly in a factory model. I cannot be in a separate space where I pick up something, develop, then deliver, then I go pick up something else, develop, deliver. I cannot be in that model. I have to think of it more like a factory setup in itself, where something is being assembled all together and I am being part of it, which we also call as the product transformation or the feature-centric type of development. It can be in IT, it can be in product space, it can be any kind of industry domain. Okay, where we build products, we build them in small bulks, and we finally integrate. So there are new models evolving on a Spotify model. There are things like extreme agile, the synthesis that is being created. So all of these are bringing out the need for us to be very much vocal, very much fast in our execution, and how quickly can we turn things out. So the need for being agile in our mindset, agile in our execution, that's the most important thing. I touched upon 2 things, right? Mindset and execution. Execution is okay. Execution is all system driven. Execution is all processes. We'll establish a process. We'll establish system. We will do that. But the first part, mindset, is the most important thing, because mindset comes from each one of us. If we don't think like I need to turn this out quickly, if we don't try to resolve the bottlenecks and keep things moving, we'll always be stuck in the whirlwind. So that is what we refer to as the agile mindset. Like, how can we do quickly things and keep moving? Say, for example, if we have to organize a college fest, and while organizing the college fest, I can do that in a typical old school way as well, right? I start putting things together, then I can start creating a big plan, then I start executing the plan from one step to another, then can keep moving that way. That's the perfect world. But sometimes it comes to like a immediate quick change in plan that is required. Then either I can start thinking all through once again and making changes and all of that. Or I can be quick there saying that, okay, I'll make a fine-tune, a quick decision, fix the part, keep moving. So that is what is known as agile mindset. How quickly can we start changing things around? So all of these are becoming the necessity of today's world. So we spoke about the ways of working. We spoke about the expertise that is required, the need for being digital, true digital adoption in any sense that we are doing, adopting the relevant tools, technologies, and the domain skills, being very product-centric, and more importantly, being agile and nimble. So these are the key tenets that are going to be testing the new model in itself, or the key drivers for the new model. Now, this model will bring into forth something known as a remote operating model or a hybrid remote operating model, where as in like, you necessarily don't have to be completely sticking to what you have been doing or the place what you're aligned. You can always execute in a remote model and everything. So it poses new challenges in terms of security, which means that we need more security experts. We need to make our systems more secure. It brings in the need for more automation, which means that any engineering practice or any engineering discipline will need more automation to be brought in, which needs more engineers to be brought in who can be very skilled and who can contribute that need. It also means that the digital part of it, like the ways of working, the operating model, and the process part of it, how can that be aligned? So which means that we need more process experts in the space, who can come in and bring the quality element, who can bring in the process part of it and articulate that very clearly. And we need more operational experts who can make sure that the entire operations goes on very strongly. We need more technical architects, technical managers kind of roles who can actually, like old world managements are changing, right? Now people need to think more from management perspective, needs to align more from technical perspective. So we need more technical managers kind of roles. So what does that mean? It just means that we need more people anyway. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, digital, these are not going to take away key jobs that we are talking about. Jobs still will continue to be there. It is just about the current trend or current scenario of companies having to go through this whole disruption, where what they have been operating in a particular way, they are being challenged to operate in that particular way. So now they have to change. Now the change would mean that they need some investments to be made. There will be new companies that will be booming up. There will be existing ones that will have to change their skin, change their brand. They will have to rebrand themselves differently. There will be new providers that will be coming into place, and our customers or the end customers will start thinking differently, which means that they will come up with their own set of new requirements. All of this will take some time, at least, because as I was saying that the normal is getting established, but in another 2 to 3 months, at least by the end of this year, that whole ways of thinking should settle in very clearly, because we can always see that now itself. If you look at it, the March time frame, March, April, May, June, the last quarter, it was a whitewash for most of the companies. GDP was absolutely low. At the same time, most of the companies also recorded very less than, most of the actually recorded loss. Very limited companies have a profit share on it. So they were not in a position to understand the implication where this is going to land. If you look at further, many of these companies didn't give a market guidance at all, saying that how are we going to perform in the next quarter. But some of them did, and many of them have started doing so now, which means that the industry has started looking up. There is a new normal that is getting established. They are starting to think differently. They are starting to rejuvenate themselves and rediscover themselves. And in one more quarter, that process will kind of settle in, and it will trigger more job opportunities coming up. That's where I said I'll come to job as the last part of it, because this new normal is essential, and this new normal is not going to cut down on the jobs. It will only sustain or increase the jobs. So there's still the heavy demand in terms of the job market, and there is a common perception that jobs will get reduced. It will not be and need not be the case. As I mentioned, the normal is to be established, but as we see the operating model is coming up now, job market will still be relevant and it will come up, but there with certain caveats, with certain catch. The main catch is that we were talking about certain drivers to this new normal, right? And that drivers included expertise, skill level knowledge. That drivers included the tendency to do digital adoption, the agile mindset and everything, which means that when an engineer is going out into the market, the expectation from that person to be a true engineer will become more of a reality. Today, from age-old times, we are always given that grace period, right? As in, like, we get on to the market, we start doing something, then we build up our experience, we become true engineers and all of that. But now the shift is going to happen in such a way so that as part of the engineering curriculum itself, or wherever we are, we have to learn it in the true sense of being an engineer. The engineering principles will have to get on to us very clearly, so that I'm not talking about by hearting the engineering principle, right? I'm talking about building the engineering mindset, or the whole product-centric, whole agile mindset, and the skill level expertise in us, so that we can start delivering. Which means that we won't get so much of a grace period to go out and learn. We are going to go out, and if there is a skill coming into the market, the skill will get picked up pretty quickly. We might see the patterns in which interviews are conducted. That might change. We might see more hackathons. We might see more coding challenges that's coming in. We might see more startups booming up after this. We might see more product-centric ideas coming in. If you look at it, very simple example is that the Indian government ban on some of the Chinese apps itself provided opportunity for a lot of the small companies to start publishing their own apps. So every action, every change is actually a trigger for a new set of activities that can come in. So, or new wave that can come in. So, as I was saying, that our ability to scale ourselves up in terms of more understanding of our practice, understanding of what we are learning, and able to articulate and explain to somebody how we have learned or what are we going to contribute, that is going to be very critical and essential. That will make sure that the jobs continue to exist and skilled labor gets employed. So the vital part is that we skill ourselves properly. There is the threat of job loss is not much there. The threat is only about us not being able to meet the demands of the industry. If we are able to meet the demands, if you are an IT aspirant, or if you are an electronics aspirant or a mechanical aspirant, learn what's latest in the latest trends that is happening, the industry space around that area. Build your knowledge around that area so that anywhere you can go out and talk about it in detail. Bring out your expertise very clearly on it. Don't just rely on the textbooks alone. Textbooks are important from a basics perspective and building up the fundamentals. Alongside, read what is latest that is happening around. That will help us settle in much better space and bring us the competitive advantage as well. As somebody rightly said, the real consumers or real service providers or the real companies will look at their consumers rather than their competitors. Any company who looks at the competitors to survive will only grow in the short term and will finally wither away. The companies or the players who actually looks at their consumers or the end users and then try to build their business case, they will actually build faster. It is true for startups, it is true for products, it is true for even services companies. So it doesn't matter. So when companies are looking at it that way, the people who are going to be employed by the companies also should start looking at it that way, which means that we should know what is happening in and around us. We should know what is happening in that domain space. We should know what are the challenges and what are the solutions offered there. That will help us position us very clearly and take us forward there. So these are some of the key tenets that is settling in now, which we call as the new normal, right? And then, as I mentioned, the normal is not there fully. Let's hope the vaccine comes in, but the world, as WHO said, the world is not going to be back to the same space where it used to be in 2019. 2021 will definitely see a new world. We don't know what's awaits us, hopefully, but most vital thing is that how quickly can we adapt to changes. That change adoption is going to be critical at every level, and the students, most importantly for you, how quickly you can equip yourself to the latest that is happening around and prepare yourself for what's coming in. And even for industry employees, right? It's very important that you cannot be in the lethargic world of, okay, you know something and you're going to stick to that world. No, it's changing very fast. It's changing rapidly. So you have to adopt yourself exceptionally well. If we know that some new technology innovation used to happen every 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, now it's happening every 2 months, 1 month kind of thing. So the span of a technology innovation is short-lived now and is being outlived by something else that is coming in, which is always good. But at the same time, it's always a challenge for somebody who is already on it to start preparing themselves or start adopting themselves very soon onto it. That happens everywhere, in industry, in colleges, everywhere. So it's all about how we prepare ourselves for it. So I'll take a pause here. If there are any questions, any discussions that we want to have, we can go on with it.
Yes, actually we can open the Q&A session right now. If you have any questions, you can comment on the chat box or unmute yourself and ask him directly. Okay, I'll start with a question. So it's actually a kind of a personal question, because I've seen and I've heard a lot about a lot of people. When they join a company, they usually jump from one company to the other within a span of, say, 5 years. They might have jumped more than 3 or 4 companies. Even in your batch also, many might have got placed in some one company and now ended up in other companies as well. So this 15 years is actually a very long journey. And with the Infosys, what's your your experience with that? Because 15 years in one single company is actually, it might be well in the professional domain, but as students, I have actually heard a lot that, because a lot of people jump from one company with another, maybe some financial matters, something like that. But what made you to stick with Infosys all these years?
That's a great question, Aditya. So let me try to answer that from my own experience. So as you said, right, the typical tendency is that when we used to join, the typical tendency was 4 to 5 years. Nowadays, I see 2 to 3 years also. Okay, so it's always that we switch companies mainly for 3 or 4 reasons, right? One, as you rightly said, financial. We jump, we get more money, and we keep moving. Second one, for satisfaction of work. Like, I might be getting a new work environment, new things to learn, keep moving that way. And the third most important thing is that maybe because of external factors like peer pressure, or maybe I'm making some other change in direction and all of that, right? So these are 3 things which typically does. And then there's another angle, which is higher education. I'm not doing that route at all. So many of my friends also did that, and some of my friends along with me are still there. The difference that I saw with regard to me, at least fortunately so far, has been that from a career aspiration perspective, I have been part of different departments within Infosys, which have been through the latest journey. Like right now, I'm part of digital practice, right? So which means that I'm dealing with something new and something innovative that's coming up in the market. So it always keeps me passionate. So all through my career, probably I have been fortunate enough to get that opportunity to be on-site or coming back offshore and working with some of the niche skilled areas. So that could be the reason why I stuck to it, and Infosys has been a good company for me so far. So that's the simple reason why it's been there so far. I don't know how long, but at least so far it has been going good. And I didn't feel a need to take a new risk actually, because there was enough on this group like digital practice and all, we faced with daily risk, right? Daily new opportunities. Actually, every opportunity is a risk. You have to learn something new, means there is a risk associated with it if you fail to deliver. So that has been the main reason. I have got that enough opportunities within the community. So that's like it on here. The most essential thing what I felt is that whichever company, you can stick to a company for a long period, you can switch your company. But ultimately what we need to think through is that what is in it from a career perspective. We should not think from short-term decision perspective saying that, okay, I'm going to get 1 lakh extra, so let me make a switch and just do it, right? Yes, 1 lakh is very important. I'm not saying that it is not. But at the same time, along with it, are you having a advantage in terms of a long-term career as well? As in, like, are you getting into some good work area? Are you getting to work with new technologies? Are you getting to work with new domain? What is in store for you as a professional? How long can you sustain as a good professional? That also should be something that you need. Then you can balance it out and evaluate and see what I'm getting from a monetary benefit versus what I'm going to get from work-wise. Are they all balancing it out and make a decision accordingly? It could be switching a company, or it could be going for higher education or staying with the same company. So that's the ultimate thought process which always works.
Yes, great. 15 years is actually a great thing. And I have actually one more question. During this 15 years, you might have gone for many campus recruitments, right? For many institutions as part of the campus recruitments and all. And you actually also mentioned that even in the post-COVID era, there is a lot of opportunities in the job sector. And we usually feel that jobs will be actually reduced during that time, and we will find it difficult to get into a job. But you are actually saying that the job opportunity is actually still the same, and you actually saying that it will get increased only in the post-COVID era. So how can actually we equip ourselves? Because everything our skill, what the skills we develop during these 4 years is which makes us into a company, right? So how can we actually spend these 4 years in the VTech life for all the graduates, UG students here? Mostly all are the UG students. So how can we actually develop our skills to get into a company like Infosys or any other IT company or anything? How can we actually? What's the importance of that skill? Can you just speak on that?
Yeah, Vidya. So I was saying about jobs, right? And I also mentioned saying that the jobs could increase, it could be, so it depends on the new normal. But essentially, I don't see a need for a jobs to be reduced. But at the same time, I specified one more term, skill. So that is the essence of the answer for your question. We have to start developing our skills when we are doing our engineering degree itself. There is a lot of difference between theory and skills, right? We can always learn the theory and imbibe that. Now, I know that within KTU's scheme itself, the essential build-up or the primary thought process has been to give more hands-on experience and all of that as well, right? Where I understand the principle and I'm aligned to that. So that is much required. As in, like, when we are undergraduates or when we are going through our engineering degree itself, we have to start practicing what we are learning. Like, just not just learning the entire theory part of it, right? We have to start looking at how are we going to learn this in a much better way? How are we going to start adopting and using it? One challenge that I've typically seen is that, say, for example, when I'm doing my campus placement interviews, we'll ask somebody saying that if that person is from IT background, we would have asked that person, okay, tell us what's the latest that you would have heard in the entire IT space. What's the latest and the greatest that is happening? Okay. Or maybe you tell us what is the latest that is happening in your core engineering sector. I can tell you one surprising part is that about 75% at least says they actually start thinking then. We can see that. Okay. They will answer something, but it's kind of like a long thought process. Then they will find out something to say that, which essentially means that they are not updated with what is happening, and they have not at least read through what is happening. There is a 20 to 25% who still answers that, and we can immediately know that, right? Like somebody who has done enough reading. I'm not saying that we have to be like geeks who reads every time, right? I'm saying that follow what is. There are enough opportunities there. YouTube, there are Udemy courses which are being offered at low pace. Even actually, Byju's and Udemy are good classic examples of how this disruption have been utilized better, because they started offering courses in lesser cost and lesser, and even for free, right? Essentially,
yes. They're actually following the geo strategy, I guess, giving it for free, and people can't live it without that afterwards.
Yeah. So they're building the stickiness like geo, same geo, right? You're building the stickiness, and you are into the platform. You start liking the platform, then you won't leave it. If a kid has started becoming familiar with how Byju's works, then ultimately it is not going to change it. So they have felt the necessity, the need, because even before the online classes came in, they know that this is going to happen. All these online classes will happen now. Now, why don't we also take the head start and we get the early advantage? So that's why I mentioned, even when the online classes started, what happened? Many of these online providers started getting good business, right? Zoom or Teams or whatever, Microsoft Teams boom like anything. So there are a lot many opportunities. So that's why I'm saying opportunities are vast and jobs are there. But the most important thing is that we have to make ourselves updated with the latest that is happening. That's very vital. Learn our concepts very well. Make ourselves updated. One typical mistake that many of us do is that, not just you, even me and our batch, when we used to be there, right? We take in the last 3 or 4 months, if the seriousness where that creeps into your mind, saying that campus placement, forget about campus placement, even if that is not there, right? That I have to get into a job, I have to find something, I have to prepare for ISRO interview, I have to prepare for this thing, that thing. That all happens in the last 3 to 4 months, and maybe not even last 3 to 4, last after exam or just before 1 month before the exam, when people start talking about majority of my friends getting into campus placement, or somebody already got into it, or some other college had good placement, or somebody's talking about CAT and all of that. That's when we start thinking about it. Better late than never. Whenever we start thinking about it, at least utilize the avenues properly. Now there are a lot of avenues that are available to hone our skills, to learn something new and bring it up. If you are into a practice, start be a practitioner. As in, like, build something small. Okay, put your hands dirty. We might fail. It is okay. But at least when you put your hands dirty, it is something which you can always talk about. When you go for an interview, when you go for the thing, you can always brag about that in your bio. You can always say that I did this and this is my experience with regard to it. This is my analysis. This is how I failed. Okay, many of the companies will accept the part that you failed trying. There is an analytical thought process to it. It is okay. But even in that failure, you have got a lot of success. You have learned a lot of things. So make your hands dirty with small stuff that you can build. Read a lot, or at least go to internet, look at content, YouTube courses available. Bring yourself to the latest and greatest that is happening. Follow trends, Google Trends or whatever that be, right? Follow trends closely so that we know what is happening around us. These things will make sure that we are on top of it, and we will not feel the skill elements missing. So even if jobs are around, if the skill part is missing, then there is no point in talking about it. So we need to have the skill element. So say, for example, as you're saying, right, at least from an Infosys perspective, I know that the Infosys campus placements are starting up now. Okay, and very soon the pool recruitments also will start. So which means that the industry has started pacing it up back again in one way or the other. But as a most important thing is like how much skilled you are. The skill element is going to be very, very vital now, even for freshers, even for laterals. The element, the experience level will vary. The expectation will vary. That is understood. But at least you cannot be in a situation where I just don't know what is happening around. I am like a new guy who is coming in now. Now make me learn and then I will be part of it. That many of the companies might not be willing to accept going forward, because they would at least want to know, in whichever you have learned, right, are you good at it?
Actually, this is quite relevant now, because as finally as we are actually, all my friends are attending the campus placement drives, training classes and like that or that. And actually the other UG students, my juniors, actually can benefit from this. They have to learn that, they have to develop the skills and like that all. Because now it's quite too late for us, the fourth years, but the second and third years have quite some time left, because next year they'll be heading for the campus placements, obviously, and they can learn to develop their skills, because online offers a lot of platforms right now, and most of them are actually free. So earlier we might have to pay for some workshops and go, but this is actually free and it's actually quite good. So thank you so much. And if anybody has any other questions, you can just ask him.
And just to add on, I wouldn't even say that the final years, I said that it's late. I would say that it's not late. Better late than never. There is still an opportunity. There is still something there. You can pick it up quickly. So don't even think that it's late. You still have time.
Yes, yes.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, no, you are.
Yeah, yes, sir. So I want to ask you question. By the way, the session was interesting. My question is it's a bit of a personal question. Like you studied mechanical engineering from GCB, right? So why did you choose IT? Like I know for mechanical engineers, they specifically choose that branch because it's different from others. You know that, right? So after all these 4 years, like why did you choose this?
Okay, well, it's not the first time that I'm facing this question. So I think I have my answer pretty much handy, but thanks for the question. So yes, even our preference have been more into mechanical at that point in time, right? And unfortunately, I think when our batch was passing out, the world was a little different then. Like not too many mechanical jobs were out in the market at that point in time, and it was pretty much restrictive. So a few companies like British Oxygen, I think Ford did some campus placements then, but campus placements with mechanical companies were not too much frequent, at least in Kerala. And then the option was more in terms of going for higher education and all of that. Well, one good thing that I personally felt was that at that point in time, during those days, we were used to get an initial hint of which area that we are going to work in. Now that process has changed. We don't give that information out, but at least it used to be there then. So we were given a clue that we will be working mostly as part of Infosys was establishing a PLES practice, which is Product Lifecycle Engineering Services, which used to deal with more of mechanical, that CAD design and Boeing kind of work, CAD design and AutoCAD and all of that. So we felt that, okay, anyway, that's this thing, so let's give it a try that way. And we joined, and most of us got placed either in one of these groups, PLES or product engineering. Those who are more inclined towards electronics background got the product engineering group, which was more into motherboards and all of that. And the other group got into PLES. Actually, I got this opportunity to be part of PLES then. Okay, so that's how it started. Then I felt that, okay, initially there was a thought process. Let me admit that I also thought that I'll join, I'll give it a try, then I'll see higher education if I want to pursue, because I was more kind of like inclined towards MBA at that point in time. But then the way the whole work turned out to be and all, I continued. Then I did my MBA part, and that's different. But the way it moved in, it was completely on a different note. So that's how the journey continued. From a core aspirant to a IT professional.
Yes, yes. Gokul has one question. So the session was wonderful. How can being part of a student startup affect our career? Means affect positively.
It's going to give you a lot of headway. What essentially is a startup, Gokul? Startup is all about you're going to try something out. You're building your own thought process. You're being the entrepreneur, right? You're thinking through as a professional, as an entrepreneur. How will my idea sell? How will my idea sustain in the market? Okay, who are my end users? How should I take my product or idea to them? Then we are talking thinking about as a professional or an implementer. How will I'll implement my idea? Basically, what we call as a design thinking, right? Which involves. Let me quickly explain design thinking. Design thinking means that's a term that is coined by Stanford University. There are 3 elements. Okay, one is just give me a second. Okay, just give me a second. Sorry, there is a risk of me losing my laptop battery power. Yeah, so I was talking about design thinking, right? So design thinking involves 3 vital elements. It was coined by Stanford University. It delves on a concept of feasibility, desirability, and viability. which is essential for any idea. What does that mean? Any idea needs a desirability. As in, like, there should be desire. Somebody needs that idea, right? Idea means there's a purpose to it. We are facing, say for example, during this COVID times, you have to conduct 15th anniversary, and we cannot do that in physical presence. So which means that you really need to do it. That's a desirability. Now then, so what will you do? You will sit and note down the options that you have, right? How will you take care of it? Then what will you do? You will put it into feasibility. You'll put it into the funnel. See what can work. You have listed like 15 ideas. Out of 15, 10 might work, 5 might not work. So you're evaluating your feasibility. Then once if it is feasible, then what will you do? You're putting it into the next funnel of viability. How can you actually bring that out? So that is what is known as, then after putting through all these funnels, something comes out saying that, okay, you decided that we will do speaker sessions and you will do it over Google Meet and send out the invites and all of that. So you created a structured plan. So I'm just taking an example, right? So this is the thought process of design thinking. Knowingly or unknowingly, many of us go through this thought process. You would also have gone through this while implementing this, or many of your ideas or many of your thought process. You may not have thought about the words exactly like desirability, feasibility, viability, and all of that, right? But essentially, you would have done that. So, which means that in our startup world also, we do the same thing. Knowing that, if we know that in a structured way, then we become real professionals, structured experts, and all of that, right? Unknowingly, when we do that, we are laymen, but we did that very well. Many of our old timers who established big enterprises and companies, or even Mukesh Ambani, right? Sorry, Dhirubhai Ambani. He would have thought through this way. He's a pakka entrepreneur, so he would have thought through this way, but he wouldn't have turned it more like this thing, right? What design thinking and all of that. So in a startup world, we are doing all of this, and you are being the entrepreneur, you are being the entrepreneur. You know the industry, you know what is required. You are selling something. So that element, Gokul, is very vital, because when you go out and explain yourself to somebody, you'll be able to explain that very well, saying that I have done this. Your startup would have worked or will not have worked. That is perfectly okay. When you go out and explain that to another startup, or explain that to another product company, or even to another IT company, you can take pride and explain what you have done, and that will give you all the benefits. I hope that answers your question, Gokul.
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. I have one more question.
Yeah.
By the way, okay. I have seen many students mostly during the lockdown, the Coursera had made a course free, right? So many Udemy, you told that upskilling with Udemy, Byju's is important, right? But I had seen that 3 or 4 months before, many students are completing a lot of Coursera courses for the sake of getting certificates. You had seen many posts in LinkedIn, right? So what do you think? Does skill or certificates matter?
And very good question, Abhinav. Actually, it's a balance. Okay, I am not there are different views in this industry a lot. I am not one who is not very keen on certificates as such. Okay, you don't have to be a certified person to be skilled. There are certain certifications, so that's why I'm saying it's a balanced approach. We have to understand what sells and what works in the industry. Please don't run behind any certification that is rolled out by anyone. There are certain certifications that are very much acceptable and very much of high value in the industry. Say, for example, if you are an AWS professional, you take an AWS developer certification. That's going to be of good value. If you are a Microsoft enthusiast and you're taking an Azure certification, that's of value. If you are a UI developer and you're taking the Angular HTML certification, that's of value. If you are an Xamarin developer and you're taking Xamarin certification, that is of good value. I'm just taking an example. So understand what is the relevance of that certification and what is the standing that particular certification has got in the industry. Then only spend something on the certification. Otherwise, focus on reskilling and upskilling. I'm not even talking about Byju's. We don't even have to go the Byju's way. There are a lot of free internet content that are available to us these days. There are a lot of channels. Twitter, we know, is a very nasty place, but at the same time, there are very good channels within Twitter itself, which always sends notifications on good and great things that are happening. We just need to follow the right channel and the right people. You'll get a lot of content that way. And similarly, whichever internet channel that we are following, that YouTube, there are good channels that subscribe to relevant content, MIT materials and all of that. So go through them. That will give us a lot of upliftment on our upskilling that we are doing or reskilling that we are doing, either ways. So if somebody is part of like civil engineering, I'm just taking an example, civil engineering, and want to learn something about IT, that person can do that through reskilling. That's what is known as reskilling, right? And upskilling, you're already a IT professional and you want to upskill yourself into somebody who is a cloud professional who knows better this thing, you can upskill, but utilize that properly, learn what is relevant and utilize it accordingly. So certification, I wouldn't advise taking any certification. Every certification is important. Understand what is the most relevant one and use that certification only. Otherwise, focus more in terms of learning. Right now, more than certification, learning and skill enablement is more important.
So yes, I guess actually we can end this Q&A session right now. Anybody has any other questions, or shall we wind up? Okay, but actually before winding up, I want to share an interesting fact about Vishnu sir. Actually, you might have come across his name somewhere in your BTech 4-year life, because if you are in KTU, you must have to complete one paper called Life Skills, and most of you might have bought Ramesh sir's white-colored book to pass that paper. So it is co-authored by a person named Vishnu RG. He's the same person. He has co-authored with our Ramesh sir to write the book, and all of us, including me, had referred to that book to pass that examination paper. So we all know him, but we don't know him directly. He is the person who wrote that book along with Ramesh sir. So that's the interesting thing which I have to share with you. Coming up to this winding session, thank you so much, Vishnu Chetta, for accepting our invitation and joining us for the talk session as part of the 15th anniversary conclave. This is a small token of gratitude from our side. Since it's a virtual talk session, we are not able to provide any shields or something like that. So this is a small, humble token of gratitude from us. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you for sharing your time, because actually, for IT professionals, Saturday and Sunday is actually family time, and you took time out of that and joined us even in this afternoon. So thank you so much. I would like to also thank all the participants who were so disciplined in this session, and they were all quiet. And hope you had a wonderful session. It was insightful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vishnu Chetta.
Thank you, Aditya, and thanks everyone. Hope it was insightful and you liked the session. And Aditya and everyone has my contact. So if in case you need to reach out to me for something, feel free to do that. Don't hesitate at all. And I'm thankful to Ramesh sir for having given me the opportunity to be part of it.
Actually, he had confirmed that he would come and join the session today, but he has some difficulty. I don't know. I called him, he didn't pick up. He wanted to join us today.
Oh, good that he didn't. I would have been very tensed. Okay. All right. So thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a wonderful year, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.